What's up, Bull fans? This is Ricky running back Joshua Kelly. I'm here on behalf of the Chargers Brawl podcast. I just got to say, man, you got to check them boys out. They're providing you all the best Charger content and NFL content. They're the best podcast station out here in the city. So check them out, man. I'm excited. Let's get it. Chargers Brawl podcast. Remember that. All right.
Cause we gotta know, how can we stop it when you have none? So just remember the kids are back. The kids are back. Oh, watch out, the kids are back. So just remember the kids are back. The kids are back. Oh, watch out, the kids are back. The kids are back.
Ladies and gentlemen, lock the doors, put the children to bed, and throw away the remote, because this is the Chargers Brawl podcast. Jake Effner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the Brawl Network. Charger fans, do we have a treat for you today? You have heard him on AM 570. You have heard him on the NFL Network. He does the Chargers play-by-play with Daniel Jeremiah. Dan Wolkenstein and I got an opportunity to speak to none other, the one, the only, Matt Money Smith. And Dan, we had a lot to talk about with Matt, and whew.
Yeah, I think there's going to be quite a bit of discussion after we finish with this interview. I mean, there's a myriad of topics we covered. We go anywhere from what it's like for Matt covering this team this season, what it's been like seeing Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen do so well this year, what the biggest priorities for Tom Telesco would be this offseason. We go into draft prospects. I mean, we get into all of it. This was a fun one, Jake. And again, big shout out to Matt Money Smith, friend of the show. We had a lot of fun, and I can't wait for listeners to go ahead and hear what Matt has to say.
So this is part one of Dan and I's interview with Matt Money Smith. Hope you enjoy it.
Well, we are incredibly fortunate and grateful to get to spend some time with a special guest. He is the co-host of Petros and Money on AM 570 LA. You've also seen him on NFL Network. He is the voice of the Los Angeles Chargers broadcast alongside of Daniel Jeremiah. You can find him on Twitter at Money Smith. He is a lover of all things sport, surfing, dogs, and libations. Matt Money Smith, welcome to Chargers Brawl podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely, Dan. I don't mean to correct you. I just want to make sure if the Twitter handle Money Smith is like passing out bad stock tips or something, I don't want to be responsible for those. So it is at Matt Money Smith on Twitter, which is not very active. I have decided that this year I was going to dial Twitter way back, and it has made me a much, much happier person. It is, I find very little redeeming quality with that particular platform. Love Instagram. Twitter's great for breaking news and stuff like that, but man, it is a nasty and vile place that, look, I enjoy people taking shots at me. That actually entertains me, but it's just the overall negativity of the platform.
It can get a little toxic at times.
Yes.
We have seen the best and worst of people on that platform.
Yeah.
But hey, we get breaking news there.
There you go. Exactly. That's why, look, it's a necessity, especially, doing what we do. You absolutely have to stay on it, because that's where you're going to get your news, your breaking news. I mean, it's hours ahead of standard websites, and Instagram is not a platform really to break news, but it doesn't mean I have to enjoy it, because I certainly don't.
Now, first and foremost, I know 2020 has been crazy. Happy belated Thanksgiving and holidays to you and your family.
Thank you.
What was the best part of your Thanksgiving this year?
Probably surfing. It's, going to be standard answer for me on just about everything these days. That is, the one. I think there's a couple things that have come out of the pandemic is, one, spending more time with the family because you're just, forced to kind of keep that unit tight with a daughter that's off at college. The fact that she spent more time at home, I feel horrible for her and kind of being cheated from that experience. But selfishly, it's been kind of nice to have her around. So between that and surfing darn near every day, that's kind of been a big bonus. And so Thanksgiving weekend, a couple days off, I was able to go to a couple different spots that I normally wouldn't hit up and hang out for a few extra hours. So, and I love Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday, and I love the food. I just kind of love hanging out with the family and not feeling any pressure to go to church on Easter, open up gifts on Christmas, or, it's just, hey, let's hang out and eat an obscene amount of food, get loaded, and sleep in on Friday because there's no work. So I absolutely love it.
I mean, that sounds like a random Saturday afternoon for Jake and I, for being honest.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm jealous if that's what your Saturdays are. I have to get up early, man. I gotta dawn patrol it and get home before anybody else wakes up because there's a list of things waiting for me to get after on my weekends.
Yeah, I'm sure. So just an open and honest question to start off. This year has been remarkable and kind of unbelievable for the Chargers at times with how this team has just found new and oftentimes excruciating ways to lose some of these games. Just person to person, what has it been like for you covering this 2020 Chargers team?
Well, I think it's probably no matter who was calling the games, if it were me or if it were someone that's been doing, like, let's just say, Brad Sham from Dallas, who's been doing this for 40 years, I think he'd probably have the same answer. It's unlike anything you would have ever expected, you'd ever seen. You couldn't, the old cliche, you couldn't put it in a script and sell it to Hollywood because they wouldn't believe it. It's different for us because if we're on the trips, we start to feel the emotional toll because we're with the players and we're with the coaches, and on the flights back, I would typically interact, with players or coaches, or, Tom Telesco and I would kind of hang out for a little bit. Trainers, those are just kind of our group of friends that we sort of, I don't want to say friends, but, coworkers that we're typically just chatting with on the way home. And to think that I'd be part of those trips home, from Tampa, from New Orleans, from Miami, from Buffalo, it's from Denver. It's hard to think of, kind of how much worse it would be to have that component, just calling the games. I think for me, the frustrating thing, and again, I'm not trying to paint this as, oh, woe is me, this sucks. But the frustrating thing is, as a play-by-play guy, you always want to get the call right. And, and because we're not calling the games at the venue, I'm reliant on a lot of these road games on whatever angles we have. So like the angle we had of the New Orleans game had an official and all of the offensive linemen signaling good for Badgley's field goal. So I call it good only to see the camera then pan to the referee under the upright and it's no good. So that sucks. To have the Broncos game end with a side judge indicating incomplete pass to Hamler at zeros. I'm like, okay, game's over. Chargers win. And I'm imagining people driving around that can't see this, celebrating, thinking, hey, the Chargers won. This is great, only to find out I've misled them again for the second time this season. And then for a third time on two separate occasions to have, actually it wasn't two separate occasions because I saw that the pass wasn't completed to Mike Williams against the Raiders, but the Donald Parham catch, touchdown signaled by the side judge, Chargers win, only to have that overturned. So that's been really frustrating to see them, kind of lose to Denver, the comebacks to Denver, to Tampa, to New Orleans, to Kansas City. I mean, that's all, part of being an NFL team, and every team is good and every team is going to make a run. It's hard to blow teams out. But I think just the nature in which these games have concluded at zeros with referees signaling a separate outcome than actually was, that's been really weird.
Now, Matt, in short, the 2020 Chargers NFL season has been one to forget, to be frank. Yeah. And with the team now being 3-8, and like you had mentioned, in all of those different occurrences and what Charger fans have had to endure this entire season, what are your expectations for the rest of this 2020 season, and what would you like to see in these final 5 games before the regular season concludes?
Well, I think your normal I think the normal sort of I shouldn't say expectation, but I would say the hope for most fans would be lose them, lose the games. You need help on the offensive line. It's a pretty darn good offensive line draft again for the second year in a row. And I think for the Chargers, if you lose out, you're probably going to have a quarterback pick. And at the top of the draft, you're going to have, yourself and the Bengals aren't drafting quarterbacks. So you're going to be able to get a ransom if teams fall in love. You already know they're all in love with Trevor Lawrence. So when you take him out of the equation, though, if it's Lance or Wilson or Fields, and there's a team that falls in love with that group or with that individual, this is a team that could use extra draft picks, that could use trading back and getting maybe 2 2s and maybe even 2 3s. And you can just fortify the defensive backs and the offensive line group. Now, that said, I think that'd be the normal sort of hope for most teams in this situation where the playoffs are not realistic any longer. But I think it's important for Justin Herbert to win. I think he's just lost too many games that he's played really well. And I just think for his long-term well-being, I think it'd be great to win the final 5 games to maybe, knock the Patriots out of the playoffs, knock the Raiders out of the playoffs, knock the Chiefs out of a number 1 spot. I think that's more valuable than a high draft pick. Closing out games, on his performance to kind of really put a cap and a bow on what's been an unbelievable rookie season.
Yeah, and kind of get not necessarily moral victories, but be able to kind of give you other ways to kind of get motivated and to kind of knock other teams off would be great. And also, I think, to your point, Justin Herbert winning games, I think, is invaluable, especially as a rookie. And we kind of mentioned it. I mean, the team is 3-8, but it has been no fault of Justin Herbert. For a rookie to come in this unexpectedly earlier in the year and to perform this well, what have you noticed this season from Justin that may fall under the radar to folks or to casual fans, or may just go unnoticed to the common eye?
Well, what I would say is probably the Bill Parcells school of scouting quarterbacks, and that's that experience is measured far too little by far too many front offices. And I think the fact that Justin's a 4-year starter is really shining through. And just that experience and game experience and managing expectations and staying even keeled regardless of what happens play in and play out or game in and game out, I think is born from 4 years of starting, and having those, awesome outcomes and heartbreakers as well for a high level program like Oregon. So I think that's something that was probably undervalued when, people were measuring, which of these quarterbacks do we like best? That's one. 2, we never saw him play like this in college. So that's why I think, holding, and I'm not trying to say this to stick up for DJ. He's plenty capable of sticking up for himself. But I think if you just go through any of the scouts and the media that are paid to do this, you didn't see this. This is not what Cristobal ran at Oregon. I think he just got the bejesus scared out of him to take care of the football because he loved his defense and loved his running game and loved his O-line. And he just wanted to win games without turning the ball over. And I think you just saw so much of that. And he was almost just kind of shell shocked into, okay, I don't want to screw the game up, as opposed to I'm going to go out and win it. And I think, this is a different system, and I think Shane's done a great job of just letting him cut loose and use his physical abilities. I mean, he's a giant. I mean, the guy, I don't think people realize because, we don't have access to the field and stuff. I'm close enough to the field, and obviously I got to see him at the combine, and I was around him at the combine. People don't realize how big he is. He is freaking huge. He is a giant at that position. He's taller than Cam Newton. He's heavier than Josh Allen. He's big. So I think once kind of people get close to him again, and there's more of these, this isn't Justin on a Zoom call. This is Justin sitting across from just fill in the blank, Michael Irvin, NFL Network talent, who's 6'1.5" and 200 pounds. And he looks like a child next to him. I think that's kind of what people are going to see once we're able to kind of have a traditional media cycle. So I think that, as well as just watch his post-game pressers, just the thoughtfulness in his answers. You can tell he's a real student and a sharp individual, an intelligent player, and that goes a long way at that position.
So that was part 1 of our interview with Matt Money Smith. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have some thoughts on some of the comments there from Matt. And we will, of course, bring you part 2 after this break on the Chargers Brawl podcast. Welcome back to the Chargers Brawl podcast. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the Brawl Network. Dan and I are going to recap that first half of the Matt Money Smith interview because there was a lot to unpack. Dan, some quick thoughts from you on some of the things that Matt had to say.
Quick thoughts. Man, is it refreshing to hear someone with just such an honest take on how he actually feels about what's going on right now with his team. I can't imagine what it's like for him where he has to sit there and call from the booth or from his house or wherever he's recording and not being there in person and having to go through the ebbs and flows of calling a game and then not calling a game and then calling. Like, that sounds rough. So hats off to him for doing that professionally because I don't think I could do that. In terms of his answer for the expectations of the 2020 season and what we should see the rest of it, how perfect was that response? I think your ears must have perked up so quickly when you heard the word draft. But there was that dichotomy of you either tank and get a better draft pick or you win for Justin Herbert, both of which are good scenarios. And I know you have some thoughts there, but I guess the last thing is to see kind of just, we've all talked about it ad nauseum, but how good Justin Herbert is. We've talked about it, but the kid is impressive. The kid is mature, cerebral, and a student of the game, and nothing phases him. And Jay, we talked about it months ago. Him coming in as a 4-year starter and having that experience of adversity in Oregon, and taking them all the way from a losing record up to the Rose Bowl. That's what you're seeing paying dividends now. And so I thought Matt was on the money, no pun intended, with some of his responses. Those are great.
I thought it was so appropriate, too, how he was just explaining ad nauseum that the Justin Herbert that was running the Oregon offense is like, we didn't see this. He's talking about it, no discredit to DJ or any of the other draft analysts out there, but it's almost like they were trying to keep Justin Herbert as like the worst kept secret and almost like hinder or hide his talents from the world during his time at Oregon to see what he has now become in such a short time in the NFL. But yeah, getting to his answer in regards to the expectations for the remainder of this season, his answer to me was great because it was a real answer and he took two sides of it. And both answers I thought were correct because he took it from a fan perspective, knowing that this team is not going to be making the playoffs, knowing that the needs of this team that you need from a personnel standpoint, you'd be much better to benefit from a higher draft pick. And like Matt said, if you could be in a position to where you could be in one of those quarterback slots when obviously you're not going to need a quarterback, that draft pick with whatever you end up with, if it is indeed high, is going to hold a hell of a lot more value in a pretty big quarterback draft coming up. And with a lot of teams that are very quarterback needy, that pick that the Chargers hold may be valuable enough to where they can ask for a king's ransom. And like I've been saying for the better part of 2 decades, trade down. I loved it when he said that too, having that type of possibility. But yes, taking it from a draft perspective, the best thing, if you were to look at it from that standpoint, is to not win another game for these remaining 5. But on the flip side of that, just from Justin Herbert's standpoint, the kid has played way too well to have only won 2 games up until this point. And it's unfortunate. And none of the losses that we have ever talked about this season, we would say fall on the shoulders of Justin Herbert. But you just feel for the kid. And you just want him to get a quality win. Not against a team that hasn't won a game this season. Not against another team that's only won 1 game this year. But like a quality win. And so from that standpoint, if it means just better confidence for Justin Herbert moving forward, I fully agree with everything Matt had to say in that regard.
Yep. So I think in short, Justin Herbert could use some wins under his belt just to kind of boost his confidence. But if you think about it, Jake, I don't even think he needs the confidence. This kid, I think he's been through the ringer already. And I mean, you saw him battle through it throughout his tenure at Oregon. Same thing here. So I really don't think that his psyche can be shot because of these losses because he's just been playing well.
So you're all about tanking right now then?
I would be, honestly, I would be okay with tanking. I think I was going to ask you, of those two scenarios, I think it's obvious you would rather us win no more games and go 3-13, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
I think that I would, if I had to lean towards one direction, it would probably be the same. But given how good that this team is, let's say we go 8-8. Jake, we're still getting a top tier corner offensive lineman, I think. I mean, if you're not getting top tier, you're getting top 3. So there's sweet spots for each position depending on what we want to do. But we can talk about that on another date. I think I would lean towards 3-13, but 8-8 would be a good consolation prize for your rookie quarterback pulling that off. I'll put it that way.
Well, I'll tell you what. I will on some of those last comments that you said, I will emphasize it because Matt goes into talking about a few of those draft type scenarios in part 2. So we're going to pick it up here. This is part 2 of Dan and I's interview with Matt Money Smith. And of course, we'll be recapping our thoughts following this part 2 segment.
Keenan Allen, he is on pace for a career year. What do you deem as kind of the biggest reasons for his success this year? I mean, is it just the fact that Herbert looks his way more often, or is there something else you've seen that he's kind of added to his repertoire that he's elevated from years past?
Well, I think it's just being paid attention to because of how good Herbert's been as a rookie, and he's breaking records as a rookie. But I think it's been there every year with Phillip Rivers as well. Like, just the separation he's able to create is remarkable. He's the best route runner in the NFL, and there's good luck. It's Stephon Diggs. There's people that'll push back with a couple other names. Devontae Adams runs nice, crisp routes, but no one's better than Keenan. I mean, nobody. And when it's third down and he's getting the ball and he's still able to create that 1.5 yards of separation, I think with Herbert, what you've seen because of the strength of his arm compared to the noodly arm that, Rivers has here late in his career. Now there's anticipation. He's still very savvy as a passer, but just the fact that Herbert is able to throw seeds. Like, you look at those last 2 touchdowns to Keenan, those are freaking lasers. DJ put it best when I mentioned that yesterday on that touchdown pass. He's like, that's a case of sometimes you catch the ball and sometimes the ball catches you. And that's the kind of zip that Herbert has and strength he has. So I think you're seeing that. And because he's putting together, arguably it could go down as the greatest rookie season ever. He's got a shot at doing that. Just in terms of statistically speaking, obviously not wins, but I think it's getting more attention. But Keenan is he's a savant. He's a genius. He really is. Like, just in those categories of just technique, route running, making yourself available for your quarterback, he is remarkable. And I mean, just so happy that, if you're a Charger fan, that Tom Telesco was able to get that deal done. I think is a huge win for this team and for Herbert moving forward.
Obviously, Anthony Lynn has come a lot under fire this season, maybe no more so than yesterday with some of his coaching decisions that he made. For Anthony Lynn and for Tom Telesco, where do you see the future of Tom and the rest of this coaching staff? Do you see as much of a coaching or possibly front office overhaul as some fans are clamoring for? Do you expect that to happen in 2021?
Well, I don't expect it at all with Tom. I think when, he's drafted pretty darn well. There have been some health issues, but when you're able to get Justin Herbert as the third quarterback selected, and, I think you probably bought yourself some time. Plus, he just redid an extension, so I just don't see them moving on from him. And Tom's done well in the draft. Tom's done well finding guys as undrafted free agents. I mean, just think about what he's found in Austin Eckler. I mean, if you just go through the rounds, I think there's one issue with Tom's draft for the most part, and that's offensive linemen, but I think that's also a product of where he's been selecting the offensive linemen. And when you look at what's lined up, like Forrest Lamp was considered the best interior lineman when he drafted him in the second round. It just didn't pan out. He wasn't healthy. He's played pretty darn well, though. I think now in his first season, I think that's starting to shape up as a pretty good pick. Sam Tevi's a 7th rounder. So I think you just kind of have to look at, we'll see whether or not Pickens develops. They knew he was going to be a development project. I think that's still a long ways away based on what we're seeing. So I think it's hard to fault Tom and the scouting staff for kind of health issues, things you can't control. Drew Tranquil breaking his leg in the first game of the season. Derwin not being able to stay healthy because of a screw in his foot, and then an MCL and stuff. So those are great picks. Drew was not a high pick either, and I think he's turned into one of the better backers in the league. So I think he's fine. Coaching staff, I think you're looking at a third year, fourth year that has not gone well. When you go 5-11 and you back it up with maybe another 5-11, it's just hard to keep your job in the NFL. Especially when most people that are talking about your team, if you're John or you're Tom or you're Dean, specifically John and Dean and the Spanoses, and you're watching, pick your channel, NFL Network or ESPN, and they're all saying this team is way too talented to be 3-8. This team has had way too many leads and games to be blowing game after game after game. I think that's going to probably weigh into your decision. I don't think you listen to the talking heads on TV to, and I'm not talking about the debate shows. I'm talking, the Skip Baylesses. That's not what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to, the analysts on NFL Network, the Dan Orlovskis on ESPN, the people whose opinions I think you would respect. I think when Baldinger and guys like that and Orlovsky are kind of scratching their heads, I think that's when maybe you do lift your head up a little bit and go, okay, what are we doing? Is this something we're going to invest another year of Joey Bosa's prime, maybe a healthy year of Derwin James, a prime year of Keenan Allen. We know what running back careers look like, and Austin Eckler is one of the biggest mismatches out on the field week in and week out. So I think that's probably the sort of inventory, kind of self-inventory they have to take and figure out if this staff is right to keep the continuity, to keep the system the same, and just hope that with a healthy roster and some better breaks that it works out. I don't know what that decision is. I think it'd be tough because I think the staff is very it's a very easy to like staff. I like Anthony Lynn a lot. I love Gus, love Shane. So I think that's the tough part is it's very easy to fire a jerk, and there's jerks out there that have been fired this year. It's not hard to do, but when they're people you like, it makes that decision kind of tough.
And just a kind of a sidebar. I mean, I think this last 24 to 48 hours has been kind of the most I've seen just on social media in general from Chargers fans in terms of having feelings about Anthony Lynn and trying to figure out how we can kind of move forward. Let's say for whatever reason he does not come back. Is there anyone, it's going to put you on a spot here for a sec, is there anyone that you see being a really good fit as a coach for the Chargers?
Well, I don't want to do that because I do like Anthony a lot. I would just say that this is going to be, if it opens up, it would be the most desirable of all the coaching jobs. And I think there would be a sizable gap between this job and the next one. I don't, whether that's Trevor Lawrence in New York or Deshaun Watson in Houston, Jacksonville, if they're the number one pick with Trevor Lawrence, whomever it may be, with Herbert here, with Bosa here, with Derwin James healthy, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. I mean, my God, you have got a loaded roster with a quarterback that looks like he's capable of winning MVP awards. So I think whatever they decide to do, if they decide to stay because they want that continuity and it has looked good, it has worked on offense at times, fine. If you want to go a different direction, I think you'll be able to take your pick of whichever coaching candidate you want. Be that the top level college guys or the top coordinators, I think would all line up and want this job.
Got it. And Matt, thank you again for joining. I know we've gone through all kinds of stuff today, but we have to ask a fun one, which we do on every interviews. So a bonus question for you. If the Chargers were a surfing destination, which surfing destination would they be and why?
You sent me this as a heads up, and I freaking racked my brain, and I was trying to think, of what it would be. And I was like, all right, is it somewhere between LA and San Diego? Is it San Clemente? Is it the kind of, tip of the cap there? Is it, I don't know. And then I started thinking about kind of, Newport and just, which is sort of Southern California's pipeline. And it's like, oh yeah, I think I can ride that wave. I'm into that. And then it just crushes you and you get absolutely destroyed. So I think, there's that as well. which I don't know what that is. That what 18th, I think, at Newport. I think, man, I think Huntington Beach Pier is probably a good call because it's such a perfect wave. And then you get out there and you think you're going to have a great time, and it's just a bunch of assholes and you're miserable. So it's like, all right, well, this was supposed to be great. Now it's not. So I kind of worked through a bunch of them. And it's hard, man. It's because I wanted to keep it a Southern California break. So it's hard. I guess maybe, you know what? I don't know. You know what? How about this? I'll keep it local. I'll go south of the pier, right at the rock wall, Seal Beach jetty, not the river, but the south side, because it might break once every 6 years. But when it does, man, it's the best wave anywhere. But you're probably going to have to wait 6 years for it. But
Chargers fans are waiting for that wave. We are ready.
But when it comes, man, you're going to hear about it for 10 years after, for who was able to go get it. So maybe we'll rest with that one.
I love it. Matt Money Smith, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Money Smith and on Instagram, Real Matt Money Smith. You can also hear him every Sunday as the Chargers play-by-play guy. Hoping to turn this thing around. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it. You can also find Matt doing the Power Rankings episode on NFL Networks, usually Tuesdays at noon. Matt, you are a friend of the show, and welcome to Hang 10 with us anytime.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Dan. Thank you, Jake. And, hey, let's get that Charger win on Sunday against the Pats, huh?
Let's go.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Well, thanks so much. Talk soon.
Welcome back to the Chargers Brawl podcast. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the Brawl Network. Well, that was part 2 of our interview with Matt Money Smith. And just as a whole, Dan, this opportunity to get the chance to talk to Matt was just, it was awesome. It was awesome. It just gave some real talk into, I'm sure, a lot of what Chargers fans are feeling right now. I would assume that majority of them would agree with a lot of the things that Matt was saying today. But yeah, some takeaways from you, Dan, on those last 3 questions that we got a chance to talk with Matt about.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think Matt Money Smith is very much a voice of the people sometimes, where it's kind of a no BS and he shoots it straight. The biggest priorities for this team, obviously, we talk about the offensive line, we talk about corner. Those are going to be big and early positions that we potentially will be drafting next year. I mean, what else can you say about the savant of Keenan Allen? I mean, the guy is just so good. And he said it. He's been this good for a long time, and he was just this good when he was getting balls thrown at him from Phillip Rivers. But with the arm strength that Justin Herbert has, it just makes him look that much better. And then, honestly, I was very happy to hear his honesty when we talked about kind of the coaching staff and general manager aspect of what he sees in 2021. Jake, I don't think there's anybody that actually knows Anthony Lynn or has spent any type of time listening to him as a person who doesn't think he is a good person and a good leader and mentor. And I think he alluded to it. Matt said, it's easy to fire a jerk, but it's a lot harder to fire someone who you like. And so I think there's the what is best for the team and the success of the team, but then there's also just the human factor and the human element. And he talked about it. And look, it's a business. I get it. But you can see why it's hard to go in certain directions when there are people that are genuinely liked by the entire organization.
Yeah, and I don't think that anybody would dispute that. I mean, I know that there's, I can't speak for everybody in that circumstance, but Dan, you and I, as well as a lot of people that I've seen on Twitter, I don't think disagree at all with who Anthony Lynn is as a person and him being a coach in this league, has done, coming up from where he came from, being a running backs coach in New York and, everything that he's come up to earn the head coaching job that he obviously had gotten for his short stint and taking the interim reins in Buffalo and then coming over here for the Chargers. But when you just look at the full body of work that has been put forth thus far, it's at some point you just have to drop it and move on and realize that it was a bad investment. It didn't work out. This happens all the time.
Yeah, and Jake, the thing that I thought was really interesting to hear, and I don't think this is Matt saying this just because he covers this team all the time, but when he started talking about if by chance Anthony Lynn is no longer the coach next year, how much of a high value and top ticket this roster is for whatever coach comes in. We talked about it. I said it ad nauseum that this team is talented top to bottom, that we have the talent to go very far in this league. Matt knows what he's talking about, right? It's easy to forget how many talented players are on this team. And let's just be real. Things just haven't worked out. We've gotten the wrong side of a lot of flukes and injuries and situational football, whatever it is. But this team has a ton of talent at its core that is young. When you can have Keenan Allen, Joey Bosa, Justin Herbert, Derwin James, Drew Tranquill, I mean, there's a lot of pieces here that several organizations would trade in a second to be in our situation.
Yeah, and that's going to make the Chargers' job, as Matt said, the most enticing gig in town. And that is one of the biggest advantages that we have going into this offseason should the head coaching position open up. Now, I mentioned the Telesco aspect because, Tom has had two head coaches underneath his tenure since being the Chargers GM, and Mike McCoy and now Anthony Lynn. And if you look at their full body of work during their time here, it's not very good. So the reason that I brought up the aspect of Telesco, now I agree and have agreed with a lot of what Tom Telesco has done from a draft perspective. Is he perfect? No way. Do I think that he's missed his number of shots, whether it's in free agent acquisitions or draft prospects, and not investing capital or money in certain positions when he could have? Absolutely. But the reason that my question came into play was, if indeed Anthony Lynn is let go by the Chargers, Tom Telesco is once again going to be tasked with bringing in the new head coach to this team. And given the fact that he has been involved in the hiring of the previous two, what are we going to see that's different in a coach's evaluation from Tom Telesco this time that is going to make us believe as fans that A, he's doing the right job, he's picking the right person, and B, something's going to change? That was the only reason I brought it up. From a draft acumen standpoint, I really have enjoyed what Telesco has done. But that was the only reason why I brought up the aspect of Tom Telesco and any possible overall, because I have seen some of those comments out there saying that if Lynn goes, then Telesco should go too. And I don't fully agree with that.
I can't go that far.
No.
I can't go that far. Jake, I have to ask, we obviously talked about surfing a bit. Right now, if you were forced to go out onto the water and get on a surfboard, how long would you be able to stay up?
Oh, my God. Well, I'm assuming a majority of people have seen the film Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Yeah. I am basically that guy where, I wouldn't do enough, or that's not it at all, to pop up properly. But damn it, I would do my best to say, hey, I'm going to stand up even if it's for a second before I left the water that day. But over under 2 seconds, I'd say, is a fair line to start me off at.
Oh, I would certainly be the under. Back in the day, I would be able to get up on a surfboard, but I think it would be tough for me to even get up at this point. I'm a little rusty, which I have no excuse, being as though I live in Southern California. But maybe Matt Money Smith, once the Chargers win a few games, maybe if we go to the playoffs at some point, maybe the three of us can go make fools out of ourselves. Although I'm pretty sure Matt would look great.
No, yeah, the two of us will make fools out of ourselves. Matt will just be sitting on the surfboard enjoying himself with a beer. So he'll be entertained. The rest of us will be fools. So a special thank you once again to Matt Money Smith for coming on the show today. It was an absolute honor having him to come on and talk Chargers football with us. Definitely hope that we get a chance to have him on again soon. Please continue to follow the Chargers Brawl on Twitter at Chargers Brawl, of course. Myself at JT Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein at Chargers Homer. And until next time, we will see you here on the Chargers Brawl Podcast.